Remember the Ice is an empowering word choice concept that helps you attract the life you want through empowering word choice. Very simply, it's based upon a story that I tell whenever I'm telling someone about the concept. And very quickly, I'll shorten it down. I lived in Phoenix. Across the street from me was a convenience store. I knew the manager. His name was Rick. I walked in one July morning and I said, "Rick, how are your ice sales?" And the reason I asked him, Dan, is up above his cash register when the customers walked in was a sign that said, "Don't forget the ice." So he told me his ice sales were terrible. Well, I said, "Hey, if you'll give me a piece of paper and a magic marker, I think I can help you out." So he did. I made a new sign that said, "Remember the Ice." Slid it across the counter, said, "Let's put this up and see what happens." 30 days later, when I came back, we knew what happened. He saw me coming across the street and tapped on the window. "You, come here." So now we're standing outside in front of the ice box where the bags of ice are kept. He said, "What did you do? I'm selling ice like crazy." I said, "Let me explain it this way. If I say to you right now, don't think of the color blue, what color did you just think of?" And of course he said blue. I said, "When your customers used to look at that sign that said, 'Don't forget the ice,' what were you telling them to forget?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, the ice." I said, "That's right." "What happens now?" He said, "People come into the store. Nobody said a word about ice. Nobody points to the sign or anything, Dan. They just walk in, they get ready to make their purchases. They look up, see the new sign that says, 'Remember the ice,' and go, 'Oh, you know what? Can I get a couple of bags of ice on the way out the door?'" Well, here's from a business perspective, here's what happened. His sales increased 500% in 30 days. Now, for me, as someone who has a passion for word choice and the juxtaposition of words, I looked at that and said, wait a minute, this is a lot bigger than just helping a chap sell ice. I said, wait a minute, what if I get rid of these words completely? What if I get rid of words like not, don't, can't, won't, wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't, and get rid of them altogether? So I did. And in the process, I created a system. I created a book. I created another book talking about naughty words. And then I just released a DVD with me talking about it. And what I do, it's available on audio, it's available on Kindle. I just want this message to go globally so that people can realize that if they get rid of naughty language, not, don't, can't, won't, it makes a lot of difference. And that's my message. My message is get rid of them. I just recently did a blog about this specific question one of my students asked me. So why does it make that much difference? And how, in fact, do you replace them? I said, well, think about this. Take the word don't, separate it from don't to do not, remove the not, what are you left with? Take the word can't, cannot, take the word won't becomes will not, remove the not, will. Wouldn't, same thing, becomes would, couldn't becomes could. Now shouldn't, that's a whole subject all by itself. Shouldn't is a word that we need to just eradicate completely, as well as the word should, because should is a very debilitating, it's a very destructive word. It puts unrealistic expectations on the people that you're shoulding on, and when you do it to yourself. And so people do way too much shoulding on themselves and other folks, and they need to stop. Should is just a word that I just get rid of completely. I've stopped using it. And what I use to replace instead is the word could. For example, how often, specifically in a BNI chapter, let's suppose that we're coming to our meeting and we know that we came without having any referrals to give. How often do you think people come to a chapter and said, oh gosh, I should have a referral? And when people get wrapped up in shoulding on themselves, what it does is it stops them from accomplishing what they could have done. So instead of saying, I should make sure I have a referral, they would say to themselves, you know what? If I really put my effort into it, I could come with 2 or 3 referrals. I could really identify 2 or 3 members in my chapter and say, you know what? This week, my mission is to make sure that I pay attention to their 60-second training moment, realize what it is that they're looking for. In my contact sphere, in my sphere of influence, I know people that they can relate to. By golly, I'm showing up with a referral for them. So it completely changes your mind shift, and it gets you to be thinking about what you could do instead of what you should have done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the word could is a very powerful word to use instead of should. That phrase came to me, Dan, as I was getting ready to write my book, and I realized that I needed a phrase that summed up the entire concept of Remember the Ice. And Remember the Ice is about paying attention to the words that we use to convey our message. And so the 9 words, there is power in the clarity of your articulation, that just summed it up. Power, the ability to do, take action, clarity, clear, specificity, lucid, very, very specific, and articulation, which is the art of actually making the sounds to speak. And so my whole concept is based upon the fact that you, me, each of us, we have the power to be very specific about the message that we do convey, which then translates into there's power in the clarity of your articulation. In addition to that, I think one of the other things that's really important is another 9-word phrase that focuses on, similarly to there's power in the clarity of your articulation, and that's this, that there is power in the physiology of your articulation. And how I demonstrate that is very simply this. Ask me if I'm confident in the Remember the Ice message.
Are you confident in the Remember the Ice message?
Yes. Ask me again.
Are you confident in the Remember the Ice message?
Yes. Ask me again.
Are you confident in the Remember the Ice message?
Yes.
Okay, so that last one obviously is very much positive.
Very, and the key to the positivity of that message is in fact the physiology of the word, the hearing the audible yes with the nod of a head. And I purposely even toned down the volume of the yes, that it was really more a very quiet, confident yes.
Authoritative.
Yes. Authoritative, yes. And whereas the other two, and I purposely, when I have people ask me the same question 3 times, I purposely want to just make it a very succinct yes, and the key is the physiology. So I went from yes to yes to yes.
Okay, for those people that are listening to this on an audio CD, and the first one, Bob actually shakes his head and says yes, and the second one he actually kind of grimaces a little and says yes, and then the third one is a very definite smiling open yes.
Yes, and the nod, just to clarify, on the first one is, or actually the shaking of the head is actually in the no fashion. So there is an absolute incongruency in the message because my head is going back and forth, meaning no, which is understood in many cultures as no, and my voice is saying yes. So that is creating some confusion. In the last one, my head is a very simple nod in an up and down, maybe once or twice, which again is recognized in many cultures as an affirmative and yes. So then it is very congruent. So the third comment or the third statement of the 9 phrases is that there's power in the congruency of your articulation. So Dan, when you took a look at it this way, if you think about that there's power in the clarity of your articulation, the specificity of the words, there's power in the physiology of delivering that message. You bring those two together and you have the power of the congruency of your articulation. And that in essence is the message of what Remember the Ice is about. And I take it, I use the ice theme throughout my concept and throughout my coaching and my teaching and the keynotes that I do, etc. The idea is to think of it as being introduced to the concept is literally just the tip of the iceberg. And the pun is intended. It is just barely the tip. Most people have no idea how deep this goes. Every single day I'm working on this. I'm coming up with new ways to describe it. For example, I was doing a coaching session yesterday as we're doing this taping. It's Wednesday here in Southern California, Wednesday the 10th of November. Last night, as I was doing a coaching session with a client in Houston, we talked about that Remember the Ice teaches people an empowering English, E squared. It's about empowering word choice, which raises the bar on how you communicate your message. So for me, the iceberg just keeps getting bigger. I keep thinking of more ways to utilize it to help people articulate their message more effectively. And the end result is that through empowering word choice and utilizing the concept of remember the ice, you're able to attract more of what it is that you want. Actually, a gentleman that I met on E-Academy, a gentleman by the name of Cornelis de Meyer. And Cornelis has been involved in BNI a little bit, but this was more from a business perspective. Cornelis owns a luxury sailing gullet yacht company. He is the managing partner. He lives in Holland. And the yachts sail in the Mediterranean off the coast of Turkey. Very quickly, when Cornelis and I met in 2008, in October, he found me on E-Academy and read my profile and learned the story of Remember the Ice. And he contacted me immediately on Skype and said, oh my goodness, I loved your concept. I'd like to talk with you about it because I need help with my word choice. And as soon as I saw that, so we connected. Even with the 10-hour time difference, we made the time. And in the process of working with Cornelis and teaching him the concept of Remember the Ice, he absolutely embraced it. And here is what happened to him very, very quickly. We met in 2008, October. In January of 2009, it was the 21st of January, as a matter of fact, Dan, he called me up on Skype and said, hey, Bob, are you available? Of course, I'll be happy to talk with you. Listen, I just wanted to let you know I've got some really exciting news. I said, what's that? He said, I have already booked 60% of my season, and it's only January the 21st. I said, wow, that sounds pretty good. Have you ever done that before? He said, oh, are you kidding? I've never done that before. The most I've ever done is like 20% by that time of the year. And I said, well, do you think that Remember the Ice helped you out a bit? He said, oh my goodness, Bob, it's the only thing that I changed. Now let me explain to you what he changed. On his website, on his brochures, on his marketing materials, on any place where he had a message out there asking people to consider booking on his cruise. Here's the message he had. Don't forget to book your cruise early on Flaka Cruising. He changed that message to remember to book early. Here's what happened. Here's the numbers. By February of 2009, he called me up. By the middle of February, about a month later, he called me up and said, Bob, I'm at 85%. By the time I landed at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam in 2009, in the 1st of May, he was already over a full booking for the season, had to add another ship. By the time his season was done, he became the largest luxury sailing yacht company in the Mediterranean, bought out his competition, increased his ships to 4, and had a 200% increase in an economy that many people said was down. He changed 2 words. He changed from don't forget to book early to remember to book early. And he also embraced the concept, works with it personally, his family. I spent a week with he and his family, his wife and his 2 small children, and you could hear them in their conversation when they would speak English. And I could even tell as they were conversing in their native Dutch tongue that they were still focusing on that and making the shifts. And as a result, here's a man who's taken his business in an economy that had challenges. He's already ahead this year what he did last year. He's already booked over 27 cruises for 2011. He's never done that before. So the impact was huge. I've seen people make shifts in their company. They've made shifts that have been as small as 25%. But when you're in the business of real estate and you're selling 25% more real estate, that's a significant increase. To as much as a 200% increase for a luxury item like a sailing cruise.
Bob, it certainly sounds like there's a lot you could teach a lot of people.
I think so.
Excellent. Bob, thanks for your time today.
It's my pleasure.
And we will hopefully get you out to Australia in 2011 and you can spread that message.
That would be awesome. I look forward to it.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.